Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, and welcome to another NerdTube review. We're doing something a little different on the channel today. We're going to be talking about a fantasy novel, Dragonlance: Dragons of Deceit. I'm joined tonight by Dragonlance superfan Reverend Jake. How are you doing tonight, boss?
I am doing great. Any day that I can talk Dragonlance is a beautiful day, regardless of the rain here in Seattle.
Glad to hear it. I'm Major Rage. I'll be hosting tonight. And for those of you who might be new to the topic, Dragonlance is a campaign setting and novel series from Dungeons and Dragons that's been around longer than I've been alive. It debuted in 1984 and has almost 200 novels to date by various authors. Um, this series means a lot to both of us. I got into it as an adult, reading it while I was sitting with my grandmother who was in a coma in the hospital. Um, Jake, you got into it as a young man?
Yeah, I so the books actually came out 2 years before I was born, so they're or 2 years after. So I'm older than them, but I was going through some really hard times growing up, and I found them and learning about the Knight's Code and Sturm really just kind of set me on a different path in life and where I could have been. And so I started modeling my decisions over, the SLR's Oath Mythos, my honor is my life. So much that I even actually went and got that tattooed on my back. Um,
And
so,
yeah, we're willing to prove it, folks. We're going to share that with you right now.
boom.
That is Revs Tattoo. We're flexing our nerd rep a little bit on NerdTube tonight. Um, But
Yeah.
no, it's a fantastic novel series, and I'm glad that you were able to get such meaning out of it and for it to, be such a help to you like it was a help to me and I'm sure to many other fans.
Yeah, it was something that really shaped a lot of my life. As you mentioned, there's roughly 190 novels. I've read 150 of them. For a while, I could recite parts of it, the lore back verbatim. I could draw the maps of the world by the hand, and I sadly knew more about the world of Kryn than I do about the real world. Um, and so yeah, definitely a favorite place of mine growing up when things weren't the best in the real world. It was a nice place to escape to.
Um so I was thinking tonight we'd kind of break it down with a plot overview, spoiler free. Then we'll move into character specifics and kind of more details of the plot, maybe things that detail oriented nitpicks that might contain spoilers. We will warn you away, folks, when we do get to spoiler territory. So if you haven't finished either the audible recording or the text itself, you can pause and come back to us when you have read it and join us in the comments section to discuss what you liked, didn't like, uh, etc. And we look forward to hearing your comments. Um, the plot of this novel is it was solid. There aren't many holes. Everything kind of makes sense, and it's a pretty standard tale of loss and how you cope with loss. Lead and the kind of decisions that you might not normally make that grief will cause you to make. What are your thoughts, Rev?
Yeah, and I think that that's true. Really, it wanted to be about um, the idea of good turn bad. At what point can the best of intentions lead you down the worst of paths? And I think that was definitely something that was very true to me. Talking or I did a moment ago about the SLRs of Mythos, I felt those words and that slogan ringing through this as I tried to talk about that. Um, I think that was really important. I think though, kind of going a little further into it, I think there's a lot of retread in this novel. and you know, and just kind of just put it out there, right out there. I think my general thing was, this isn't the book that I wanted them to write, but it was fantastic and I loved it. Um, and yeah, that's
From a
kind of my
mark,
overall.
I feel that this was the book that Wizards of the Coast needed them to write. I feel that this whole where we're going with this plot, to not get into any specifics yet, is to set up a new campaign setting so they can sell Dragonlance 5th edition merchandise and books.
Yeah, I think it was to breathe life into the more popular stuff that they've done. And you know, just to kind of, you know, talk about that, you know, background, you know, as I'm sure most of the fans who are watching know, you know, the War of the Lance time period in the history of Kryn is really where most of the campaigning was done. It's where most of the fandom got hooked. And it's where a lot of the novels take place and people love it. After they finished with that, they tried to do some different stuff with what they call the Fourth Age or the Age of Mortals. During that time, they tried coming out with a brand new game to go along with it that wasn't actually tied to D&D. It was some different card
Saga,
game.
correct?
Yeah, the Saga rules, and that wasn't received very well by the fans.
No.
And after that, there's two different no, two different what I would call course correcting trilogies: the War of Souls and the Amber and Blood series, or as I call them, the two Mina trilogies. And I think that was an attempt to course correct, but they really wanted to drive the heart of things back into the core of the War of the Lance, and that's why the book, you know, largely takes place, you know, during or near that time frame. I don't want to get too far into it without spoilers, but I think it's been, you know, pretty well noted that this book does take place, you know, during that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it does cover a large time frame. It's not just one during one of the books or anything. It's a little bit more than that without getting into specifics. But yeah, I think really just, yeah, like you said, it's a marketing ploy to get people back into that. It's good though.
It's great. I loved I loved it. It was great. I was listening as much as I could. I know you could barely put it down from,
Yeah.
kind of our talks and our group chats. But
I was reading this with a fever of 101. If I had the strength to hold the book, I was reading it. It took me 3 days. It should have taken me two.
it's a pretty dense text, though. I mean, but no, I mean, they gave us a pretty hefty synopsis. So I feel like, we knew going in this was going to be, around that era and not set, thrusting us too far into the future and kind of bringing us back to the core of what made everybody fall in love with Dragonlance to begin with.
Yeah, I think I kind of want to save part of this for when we get into spoilers because I don't
All
want
right.
to ruin anything.
No.
But I had missed that part of the marketing. I knew I'd read the synopsis and I knew that part of it had to do with finding Tasselhoff, which, you know, it's you know, to talk on that, since that's part of the out there synopsis, I guess it's a little spoilery, but I was really sad that they couldn't put out a book without Tasselhoff in it. And that's kind of been, that was one of my complaints about the second Mina trilogy, is of course they had to bring Tasselhoff into that. And I wish they could just move on without having to have Tasselhoff in every single book, but he is
Many would
lovable.
many would argue that Tasselhoff's the main character of the entire series.
Oh, that's exactly the argument I'm making. Is
Uh,
that I wish they didn't need that, but yeah, he is.
for good or ill, Tass is the mascot, and um, so I think we're both itching to get into spoiler territory. So here at about the 9.5 minute mark, if you haven't finished, everybody, pause now, pop this into your watch later, come back and join us. And we're going to move on into spoiler territory and start kind of discussing the new original characters, which we did have original characters and we had returning characters here in Dragons of Deceit. Um, Destina Rosethorn is our character with the inciting incident, and she's a young Salamnic lady. We meet her at her 15th birthday.
Yes, 15.
Uh, 15, and we kind of you see Destina grow a little bit, mature some, and I feel that the book would have suffered some if it had more time with a younger, more immature protagonist, that it would have been retreading a lot of Lorana territory. I'm kind of glad that they did time skips to age her up, have her mature kind of off screen as it were, and grow into the character that they needed her to be for the plot they wanted to tell. What were your thoughts on Destina?
Yeah, I agree. The 6 year time jump was really, I think, important. I really liked what they were playing at with fate and destiny throughout those chapters. It kept me engaged, even though I was like, ah, she's a little bit young for a protagonist. Let's see what happens. And then they age her, and you're like, okay, cool. And you get to know her. And you really got to get to see her come into her own as she interacts with her mother. And she kind of changes. So I really like that. It was a lot of really great setup so that when you kind of leave her for a chapter or two later in the book, you're not really concerned. You really know who she is, and you come back and she's like a warm glove, you know? You just put it right on. You're like, yeah, it's Destina again. Um, but so I like that. She's really good. She's got some good character growth. Watching her eventually, kind of getting into the later chapters, as she sinks into being more of a darker, brooding person and willing to break the rules to get what she wants. I think it shows a lot of character growth. Maybe that's not character growth in the right direction, according to any Slomnik, but it's still character growth, and she changes, and I found that interesting to watch as that transformed.
Absolutely. She's very much a dynamic character and a well fleshed out character. Um, I really liked her. I find myself still liking her even when she's doing things I don't like.
Yeah,
Because at the end of the day, I think I mean I understand her motivation. I mean, who wouldn't try to take every opportunity to get a loved one back that was taken before their time?
yeah,
Um, I guess moving on, I one of my favorite characters in this was Saber.
hands
I
down.
think Dragonlance is almost at its best when it is giving life and personality to a dragon character. It's something that makes Dragonlance stand out to me as opposed to other fantasy literature. Is there's a sense of dragons are these big personalities and characters that are more than just a big monster. They've got their own motivations, personalities, and characteristics. And I had never read anything with a copper dragon before, so it was fun for me to see kind of the traits of a copper dragon that they had Saber exhibit uh, over the course of the novel. What did you think?
Yeah, I think Saber was my favorite character. Really, just had so much personality, and he was fun. Every
Mm-hmm.
time he enters the scene, you know it's going to be a little bit more lighthearted. His love of baubles, and they did a really good job to incorporate what to me is the core idea of what a copper dragon is into this story. And that's kind of one of the things that I've really liked, about Margaret's work, especially in kind of off topic here, but the second of the Mina trilogy, Amber and Iron and Amber and Blood and all of those, is that she can take a character class and then boom, you feel that character not only as a character in a human or whatever, but as the class that you've been playing in D&D your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was done really good here with Saber, and just boom, he's a copper dragon. He's talkative. He likes his treasure hoard. There's a reason why he's got it, and you have to kind of placate him and keep him happy because even though he's a dragon, he might eat you. And so I just thought it was fantastically done, and yeah, they need to put one of these dragons in every book.
Good dragons get hungry too, so make sure you get him the ugliest, gaudiest thing you can find in Palanthas, folks. Bribe Saber.
Yes.
Um, Now we get to our third of the new and original characters. We get to the Durgar Wolfstone. He's a friend to the High King, and he acts as a covert agent, informant, and I think he might have been my favorite new character in this book. I liked seeing things from a Durgar point of view. I think that that's another place Dragonlance excels is in the various individual aspects they give to their various dwarf clans, and
Hmm.
each really feels unique and fleshed out. And it was nice seeing a Durgar be kind of more in the limelight. And then, I think they had a lot to say about prejudice and a lot of the kind of attitudes that he had to overcome and deal with.
Yeah, and to kind of do a little bit of a sidestep here on that note specifically. There was a lot of drama where the possibility of the book not getting released was a thing. And I know that a lot of that drama had to do around them wanting to, or about WotC wanting to include some more of these situations like that, where we're, talking about not judging books by their covers. We're including a more diverse cast, and I think, to kind of again continue that sidestep, I think that's a lot of why we got a character who had very different parents with the Solomnic and the Argothian tribes, kind of having that dichotomy in her character. I think that's kind of probably something that WotC was pushing for, because I think that's something we see a lot in real life. People who have dichotomy, parents who come from two different worlds, and how does that meet in you? Or people who are judged because they belong to a certain social class. And I think kind of opening, was one of the things this book did really well, was kind of open up your eyes to say, what, these people aren't terrible because of the social classes they belong to, or because of who their parents are, or because their parents believe things that are different than maybe what the majority of the people in the town you live believe in. And so I think that was done really well.
Mm-hmm.
And something I felt 100% talking about with him being a Dewar. As soon as they said he was Dewar, like, I almost crapped my pants. One of my favorite things that I love about Dragonlance is the dwarves. I'm a 6'4", so I'm definitely not a dwarf myself, but I was definitely heavily into dwarves when I did that. I even created my own fake dwarven language and was trying to push that out on the Dragonlance forums back in the day. So I love the dwarves, and to see them go somewhere, and the Thewar as well, because you don't see a lot of talk about the Thewar. They focus heavy, and there's a dwarven trilogy name I can't remember, where they really get into the clan wars between the different clans. And other than that book, you don't see anyone talk about differences between Daywar and Thewar. So to see that brought to the life, and especially in such a fantastic character, was just, well, fantastic, to overuse the word.
Yeah, all of these aspects of the characters easily could have been something that was tacked on just to please the diversity reader and the sensitivity reader. I'm not sure what they're called, but I know that a lot of there was certain segments of the fan base that got upset because one was even brought onto the project. But I
Mhm.
feel that these aspects of the characters feel natural, they feel organic, they make the character who they are, and they're baked in intrinsically into who the character is and not something that's tacked on to, for Wizards of the Coast to be able to say that they're being politically correct or whatnot. And I think it shows a lot of uh, Margaret and Tracy's skill as very experienced authors to be able to craft realistic characters who are organic characters that have varying backgrounds, and to be able to tackle modern social issues without being products of their time.
Yeah, I definitely think it doesn't hit you over the head with it, but at the same
Not at
time,
all.
it's very realistic. And, into the idea that some people are upset about this, I think they also have to remember that the reading demographic has changed. But at the same time, the readers of fantasy and the people who play D&D are often the downtrodden of society, the people that, you know, have hard stories and are on the edge of some social circles. And so I think it's important that we represent those people in the media that they like to enjoy and I like to enjoy, because as much as I don't know what it's like to, maybe be trans, or to have a biracial family, um, I know other things about me that can help me, that still I can identify with them in the hardships they go through. So I think it's important that we include their stories like anyone else's. To really go off topic here, one of my most connected stories I've ever felt in my entire life is Zaz from Final Fantasy 13. um, and that's just, it doesn't matter, what's going on with his, ethnic background, his story, and what he does connect. And I think that's the same truth here, is that the stories around these characters are crafted so fantastically that, even though you're definitely never been a dwarf, you can connect with what it's like to be a Daewar and to be looked down upon because your state or whatever your local economy doesn't have any money because of whatever happened. It's nothing you did, but you're forced to live like that, and you're just trying to get by. Um, and so I think, like I said, it was fantastically woven. Sorry, I totally diatribe there.
No, it's okay. This is important stuff that we needed to talk about. I just wasn't sure where to fit it in, but
Yeah,
I'm really glad that we talked about this. I'm glad we're on the same page, that we feel like it was well done. It could have been something that was easily just tacked on to Destina, but instead, she wouldn't have been the character she was had her parents not had the disparate backgrounds and points of view
yeah,
that being from different cultures brings. And she is a richer character, just like our society is richer for having people of different cultures and points of view.
exactly.
um do we want to talk about Ungar, the
Oh, I
a
mean, I don't
very
think you could skip Ungar, or however you want to pronounce it.
he's just no, he's bit player. He's just dislikable. He's
Right.
supposed to be dislikable, so they're knocking it out of the park. I hated that guy.
Yeah, he's such a slimy little devil. And I mean, I was gonna say to not talk about Ungar would be to not talk about the stone that you just accidentally kicked, because it hurts, and it's supposed to hurt because you're not supposed to kick stones. He is just a dirt pile and a slimy little bastard. And I loved seeing what happened to him at the end, where he's kind of a prisoner of the, or a guest of the tower, and even Lunatari has turned her back on him. I think that actually sets him up for a really good arc going forward. Because you do occasionally see a little bit of good in him, a little bit of neutrality, and definitely a bunch of evil. But I think that you could do some really interesting things they've set up with him. They could do a redemption. They could also do something where he all of a sudden comes on top and is evil. I think that there are some really interesting things that they could do with him going forward. And so I'm excited to see what they do with him. You have to have a good bad guy. It's like Paddon Fane in The Wheel of Time. Paddon Fane is fantastic all the way through all the books because they set him up right at the beginning as this low level cretin. And I'm really hoping they can do the same thing here with Ungar.
It's interesting. I didn't see Ungar as a villain. I saw him as an antagonistic character, but to me, it feels like the villain of this novel is fate itself. Fate's the bad guy. It's the one that Destina's goals are in opposition of.
This being Dragonlance, I have to assume that we're going to get a deity as the primary villain, and they're going to be shown as masterminding a bunch of this. I think
Mhm.
that's a given because it's Dragonlance. especially because, I mean, if we're talking about spoilers here, I think they're going to try to reset the world. But uh,
No,
so
definitely. Uh,
it sounds like Takesis.
oh,
It's always Takesis.
I would be very, very surprised if this isn't part of the machinations of the Dark Queen. This is a perfect transition. We can, start talking about maybe our predictions and maybe why we feel like we can make predictions.
Yeah, I
Because
mean, if we're going to kind of talk just general spoilers on the book here for a moment, and before we hop into predictions, I think to kind of say what I was saying earlier, this isn't the book I wanted them to write. I wanted to hear more news stories about the new goddess of tears, Mina, after she ascended to godhood. That's what I wanted to hear about, and I didn't really want to retread the War of the Lance. I don't want them to change it. I don't want them to undo what happened in those books. And I think it's a cheap cop out. Um, and so I think that you know, Ungar's not a protagonist. I've got all the other ideas just jumbled here. You have to forgive me.
it's okay.
Ungar's not a villain, but he can be a great one. He is definitely an antagonist. He's antagonizing everybody and trying to do what he wants. So there's a lot of room for that. But at the same time, if Ungar becomes a greater villain, then how does that play into the other timeline? I think he can at best be a villain for this series. But in as much as this could be a Dark Queen machination, I don't see it as that because I believe they've said that they want this book to be about what were the other gods doing during the same time frame. So we kind of know what's going on with Takesis, especially with her being rebanished from the world. I think at the end of when that happens, but I don't know. I think I just went over 5 or 6 different things at once, all jumbled together. But I couldn't separate them. They all just came flying out.
No, I'm pretty sure we're looking at a reset or a setting up of two different timelines. I mean, they've even got some branding going on. This is classic Dragonlance. The I mean, it kind of infers that we're going to get new Dragonlance, much like new Coke. Uh, so I mean, they need to sell fifth edition books,
Yeah.
and I mean, people didn't respond well during 3.5 to the stuff post Mina. It,
Well,
players didn't really like it.
that's not fair. WotC pulled the licensing from. Okay, so 3.5, Margaret's team bought the licensing to do all the books. They released on their own a whole bunch of 3.5 campaign setting books and all of that. However, they lost the licensing contract halfway through the modules they were putting out, or like 3/4 of the way through, or some shit like that. And WotC set them up to fail because they didn't like that they were succeeding without them. History. Sorry.
No, it's all good. No, that's why you're here, to be able to talk about things that I'm not as knowledgeable about, and
Yeah.
that's great thing about collaboration. But I feel that they're using the time travel shenanigans to set up for a different timeline.
Yeah.
That way, a new generation of players can experience kind of the adventures of the War of the Lance. Get to know the companions at the end of the Last Home all over again,
Yeah.
and get to know Huma and and Magius, and get to know the events of the Third Dragon War. Maybe we'll get adventures set in Third Dragon War out of this.
Yeah, and that's what it sounds like they want to do, is just kind of jump all over their most famous time points and use those, and kind of reintroduce people to those different settings. Which then makes me wonder, we talk about the future of the series. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious book 2 is going to be the Third Dragon War stuff. Do you
Hmm.
think then that they'll jump forward into War of Souls for the third book?
Maybe, or they could meet in the middle and jump straight to the events of Summer Flame. because they keep foreshadowing that, with Renneker's clock.
Yeah.
They, the events when the Urda are going to, shatter the Grey Gem and set
Yeah.
forth chaos. That's kind of the watershed moment for the timeline. You lose traditional magic and you see the introduction of newer character classes like sorcerers and the new types of healers that aren't clerics and such as that. And maybe they're wanting to try to keep it, you know, they're going to want to jump around and try to cover things as much of the stuff that exists in the 5e rules as they're sitting. I feel like this product isn't necessarily directed at classic fans. It's trying to straddle a line where they can appeal to new fans, but also appease folks like you and I.
Do you think they're going to introduce new races and those additional types of classes throughout the series?
It would be good from a marketing standpoint. I'm not sure if it would work from a storytelling standpoint.
Yeah.
We've seen, familiar stuff so far. Nothing that just kind of, stands out to us. All of a sudden having a tiefling or a Aasimar character, you know, could be a little bit off-putting for some Dragonlance fans. Your purists that are like, those aren't on Kryn.
Right. And well, though at the same time, because they're playing with the Chaos Gem, which creates races,
Mm-hmm.
they absolutely could all of a sudden be on Kryn, and it could be canon. Um, I've always liked to think of the I forget what they're called, but like the machine race they invented. I've always thought that they could fit in as a gnome invention, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think there's some room for it. I'd be a little bit surprised, but if it gets Dragonlance moving forward, I'm okay with that. Um, I'm more so I'm concerned about things like Kender and Kryn gnomes, which are very unique gnomes,
Mm-hmm.
getting rules made for them and seeing them be treated like an actual race, I think would be a lot of fun. But there's the overlap with halflings and Kender, so who knows what will happen there.
Um, Maybe we can make a separate video talking about Dragonlance 5e as new stuff comes out for that. I know there's some stuff on Unearthed Arcana already for Kinder, and we've actually seen some of Margaret's reactions to it on social media. I don't want to get into that and create like a tangent station. Um, but no, do you have anything else to add before we mark it?
No, I don't really think so. I think I hit the big ones. Again, I love to see something new after I think I think we're at just shy of 15 years. I think it's 14 or something like that since we've had a new book. So it's fantastic to be able to bring some new life into it, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And who knows? Maybe if they actually put that campaign stuff out, we could. Have a little D&D live stream session and really kind of show people what it's like.
That sounds like a plan to me. I know I was excited for this. It was the first time since I've been a fan that there's been new Dragonlance, especially new stuff from Margaret and Tracy, and it felt like visiting old friends. It,
Yeah.
it it really felt like being with old friends, and I really enjoyed it. Are some of the plot threads derivative and reminiscent of the Legends trilogy? Yes. But I mean, there's so
Yeah.
much original, and all the original is so well done that I want to give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm super concerned with this turning into Terminator Genesis, or the Flash movie that's supposedly coming out for Warner Brothers, and just being a really bad marketing reset, kind of like how we got a reset of Spider-Man every so many years. And that, other than that concern, I really enjoyed the book, and I'm actually willing to give it a 9.5 because I don't think that my concerns for what could go wrong should be what I'm judging the book on. I should only really judge it on what it did do wrong, And for me, the only thing it did wrong is it put out a history book. As I said, I am someone who studied the world of Dragonlance and its timeline. So to me, to go back to the War of the Lance, I feel like I'm reading a history book rather than an exciting new novel. And that was, it's a personal preference, but otherwise, I give it a 9.5. It was really well developed, and I said I couldn't put it down.
I was hoping for maybe a better jumping on point, like maybe a new sort of introduction for a new generation of fans that didn't have maybe spoilers of the old stuff. I was hoping to get the wife in on it. Um, but no, I mean, you can't ask that of them. They can't give us something new and give us something for new fans. So I'm gonna stick by the 9.
All
Um,
right.
let us know what you thought of the book. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Let us know in the comments below after you mash that like button, the subscribe button, and please hit that bell icon. You can see anytime NerdTube uploads a new video. We talk about tons of different stuff here, from sports entertainment to Star Trek, MCU, Star Wars. We do a little bit of everything here.
Video
Final
games.
video games, we do Final Fantasy. Me and Cheeto do Dragon Ball. So if any of that is stuff that maybe you would like to see more of, please hit those buttons and come check us out. We're NerdTube, the best channel that you've maybe sort of kind of heard of.
Hopefully.
Thank you for joining us, viewers, and thank you for being here with me tonight, Jake.
Thanks, Mage.